Hey guys. Alright, so today I'm here to talk to you about America's dilemma with food waste. I'm sure we've all gone to a restaurant, taken home leftovers, thrown them in the fridge, planning to eat them later, only to have them go bad a couple days later and toss them out. Same with going to the grocery store. You get overzealous, buy a bunch of stuff you think you're going to cook, you take it home, you cook one or two things, you end up throwing a bunch of vegetables away. You have a bruised apple in your cupboard, you don't really think twice to toss it away. But when everybody has this kind of mentality that you can toss a couple of things away here and there or don't really care to let leftovers go bad, it adds up to some really astronomical numbers for food waste in the US. So that's what I'm here to talk to you guys about today. So from farm to landfill is an unfortunately true statement. In the United States alone, over 40% of the food that we pour our resources, time, and land into growing and producing for our civilization goes into landfills. So if you think about that, that's almost half of everything you eat basically goes into the trash. So as you can see here, or probably not see in the video, what this graphic is basically saying is, as I said, over 40% of our food that we produce goes into landfills and into the garbage. That's over $400 a year per person that you could save if you weren't wasting as much food as you do. Or an estimated 133 billion pounds of food in a year that goes to waste. We could reduce our energy costs by up to 2% by simply reducing this food waste by just a small amount. So again, as I said, that's over 35 million tons of food that we waste per year, and $160 billion that would cost. So I mean, if you think about that, if we saved even a little bit of this food, and you'll see in another graphic here in a second, we could feed hundreds of thousands of hungry people by simply being more conscious about how much food we buy, how much food we cook, and how we waste it. So as you can see, the 35 million tons of food is over triple what we wasted in 1960. So clearly this is getting worse and worse as time goes on, and something has to change or it's just going to keep getting worse and worse. So as you can see here, so what this says is another one of the reasons that a lot of food gets wasted is a lot of grocery stores and corporate things have pretty strict regulations on what food that they will be willing to sell to consumers. And this comes down almost purely to aesthetics. So apples that may be discolored, or mutated fruits like you've seen like these, the tomato has another little tomato growing out of it. Grocery stores will just throw this stuff away. Completely edible, but they believe that people won't buy any foods that don't look perfect in their mind, and this leads to huge amounts of waste. So I know personally here at King Soopers in Colorado, they tend to offer discounted prices on these unperfect vegetables and fruits, which I think is awesome. If more grocery stores and places would start doing that, we could already start to save a bunch of food from getting wasted. So here you can see, and that right there is just a landfill full of almost entirely fruits and vegetables. I don't see a single piece of garbage in there. So it says, while the US throws away almost half of the food it produces, 1 in 9 people in the world still suffer from chronic hunger. So as you can see, this clearly is not a problem of how much food we produce, but how our food is distributed and cared for. And also 14% of Americans still struggle to put food on the table. So while we're wasting 40% of the food we produce, 14% of our citizens still aren't getting enough food to satisfy their families. And this graphic, shows that if we were to reduce our food waste by 15%, we could feed 25 million people. So that's not a big amount to reduce from wasting 40% of our food. To knock that down by 15% is something we could easily do by changing our habits in our own homes and helping to push grocery stores and other corporate places to donate food or sell unperfect foods at discounted prices, or any way that we can find to reduce our food waste can feed huge amounts of people. So right here, but hunger isn't the only issue that this waste attributes to. Unfortunately, the worst part of it is that this garbage piling up in landfills is compacted by compactors and put into anaerobic conditions in landfills, and what this leads to is huge buildups of methane gas. So this decomposing food, almost 1/5 of our total waste, including garbage and everything, is food. So 40% of our food goes into landfills, and as it decomposes in landfills, it releases huge amounts of methane gas. and this gas is 20 times more damaging than CO2 to our environment. So, I mean, you hear about global warming in the media all the time, and it's always talking about carbon emissions and CO2 levels, and here we have greenhouse gas that's 20 times more potent than that going into our atmosphere every day simply from food that we throw away on a daily basis. So as I said, it counts for 1/5 of our total waste is all organic waste, and that adds up a lot into methane gas. So as you can see here, this graphic is basically explaining that the trash compactor compacts all this food down into landfills to conserve space. That creates an anaerobic condition, and in an anaerobic condition, when food decomposes, it creates huge amounts of methane gas. So while we're also just throwing food away that could be eaten by other people, we're also destroying our environment and creating global warming by doing so. As this says, the USDA has plans to try and reduce our food waste by 50% in the next 15 years. So this is not by any means a concrete plan of the fact that food waste will be reduced by 50%. This is them setting an optimistic goal to hopefully get people inspired to reduce this even by half that much. As you saw, if we reduced it by 15%, we could feed 25 million people. So I'm here to show you a couple different ways that we can all try and save and waste a little bit less food. So this graphic here shows you where most of the food waste comes from. Grocery stores account for 43 billion pounds of food waste per year. Households are 25%, farms 20%, and breweries 90%. So it's not 90% of the total waste, but 90% of the food and grains that breweries use for brewing, so the hops and the wheat and all that, 90% of that basically just gets boiled and then thrown out. So that accounts for a huge amount of waste, so if breweries could find a way to help reduce that, that could help exponentially as well. So in this graphic, again, simply teaching people how to buy and cook food properly could seriously help to reduce this. Again, like I said, you go to the grocery store, you buy a little bit too much than you actually need, a bunch of the vegetables end up going to waste. I've done this a bunch of times, I know you guys probably have too. If we just tried to shop smarter and cook a little smarter, we could help reduce this household by household and start to make a dent in this. So, as this graphic says, food. Buy it with thought, cook it with care, use less wheat and meat, buy local foods, so your local farmers markets are great options for this to support local farmers. Serve just enough, so don't overportion, don't cook a bunch of food planning to eat it later if you know you're not going to. I'm guilty of doing this one in person. I like to make a lot of big stews and stuff, think I'm going to eat it later, and a few days later I end up having to throw a bunch of it out. And use what is left. So again, when you do have these leftovers, be diligent about trying to use them. If you order out and you have leftovers, try to use those, find someone else who will eat them. Just try to avoid getting food in the garbage in any corner you can. So like this says, it's up to us to try and reduce the amount of food waste. There's nothing that any other companies can do other than try and set up donation programs or things like that. But in the long run, it comes down to me and you and everybody else simply trying to reduce their day-by-day food waste from cooking and buying and groceries and the such. So we're almost done here. This is an excellent documentary that I recommend all of you watch. It's called Just Eat It, which also falls by another plan of how we can help reduce waste. If you have a bruised banana or a bruised apple, I mean, just eat it. This documentary is awesome. It reiterates a lot of the stuff I just said, and it's a really cool thing to watch. I would also recommend you watch John Oliver's piece on food waste. You can find it on YouTube if you type in John Oliver food waste. There's a lot of awesome points in that. So in conclusion, honestly, it's an awful waste of riches in a country like the US that's blessed with an abundance of agriculture like we are, that I think we take for granted a lot. And there's only one way we can change this, and it's up to us. We can reduce food waste, and we can do it right now. Any questions?
So I know that a lot of chain all-you-can-eat buffets like Golden Crown, some of those places, for a while they weren't allowed to donate their leftovers, so they just put them away. Do you know if any of that has changed, if there's any plans to change that?
That comes down to one of the same reasons grocery stores aren't able to donate a lot of their foods, is it comes down to liability. If they go and donate all of these foods to a homeless shelter and someone gets horribly sick off that for some strange reason, that would technically fall on the grocery store or the buffet, and they could be, shut down for something that isn't technically their fault.
Right.
And so I'd like to see some sort of program developed where they kind of take the liability out of that. and are able to donate these foods because, yeah, perfect example, in all-you-can-eat buffets is a horrible waste of food, especially for, things people might not like, and they're just throwing, loads and loads of this stuff away. And the same goes for grocery stores. I know places like Whole Foods and stuff have put locks on their dumpsters when they throw away food so that homeless people can't get in there and eat the food and have some sort of liability fall back on them. So as far as I know, I'm not sure if any programs like that exist, but that would be a great way to help reduce that.
In your opinion, what could we do in our everyday life to help reduce food waste?
Cool. So yeah, this is where I'm hoping that I can help do this too. I do like to cook at home, and I do buy my own groceries and stuff, obviously. So when I go to the grocery store, I'm going to try and buy for, the next 2 days instead of buying for like 2 weeks worth of food. Try and buy what I need and cook what I buy, and make sure that I'm not, buying a bunch of fruits and vegetables that I think I'm going to cook and then don't cook them. I can't tell you how many times I've done that. So, I mean, as this graphic right here said, it really comes down to buying food with care, cooking it the right amounts, serving correct portions, using less wheat and meat. The meat industry is one of the largest contributors of methane and CO2 to our atmosphere as well. So using less wheat and meat and just caring more about what you cook and how you buy it is a great way to reduce that.
And honestly, I'm just curious to know why you chose the topic of food waste.
Good question. So the reason I chose this, honestly, was after I had watched the John Oliver special. He talks about a lot of these things, and he really brings up some crazy points that just make me, honestly, I can't believe that we waste almost half of the food we produce. I mean, we pour our water and energy and resources into growing this. We use, I believe, 30% of our land worldwide for agriculture, and we're essentially just growing things to throw them away. And I feel like if we can get people to start reducing waste a little bit household by household, we can start to tackle this problem, reduce food waste, and slow down global warming in a way that we can all do every day in our own homes. Cool.